Hey Jacob, it's Kathy Salmon Photography. How are you? I thought I would put a video together since I'm practicing and show you the equipment that I use for my real estate photography. The first thing I'm going to start out with is where I've gotten all this, which is B&H Photo. I think we talked about that. There are other sites that you can go to, KEH, which is all used camera equipment. That's one I would highly recommend. I bought a few things there, not for real estate, that I actually love. They stand behind their product. B&H, as you may or may not know, also has a used department. So I would recommend looking at that if you're looking at keeping your cost low. Okay, without further ado, the first thing I'll talk about is the camera, which is actually on the tripod. The camera is a Canon 6D Mark II. The reason I selected that one is primarily because of the image quality, the ease of use, and I like a full sensor versus a cropped sensor. If you don't know the difference between the two in a nutshell, cropped sensor is just that. When you're looking at the photo, it gets cropped when you go to put it, when you go to upload it. Whereas with the full sensor, what you see is what you get. If you have questions about mirrorless, my opinion is it's overkill for real estate photography, but it all depends on who you talk to. I've only used a mirrorless briefly. Quite frankly, I didn't see the difference, and with the cost, it wasn't worth it for me. So I went with the Canon 6D. The other thing to think about too, a lot of people just base it on cost. My suggestion is to actually hold the camera. You can go to your local Walmart or Best Buy. They have various types of cameras there, and just pick it up and hold it. Believe it or not, it can make a difference. That was the first thing I did. That's the reason I went with Canon. For me, it was Canon or Nikon. But I know there's other cameras out there that people use. So whatever you feel you want to use is entirely up to you. The second most important piece of equipment is your tripod. I have a Manfrotto. I love it. The reason I selected that is because it was really heavy duty. It was highly recommended by my coach. I went out and got one. I got his model as well. I don't think this particular model exists anymore, but what you could do is go to Hunt's Photo in Providence and see what they have available. Don't buy used, whatever you do. That's a piece of equipment that you want new. And I say that only because those screws can go pretty quick, and you don't want to be photographing something and all of a sudden your tripod goes down. So go to Hunts if you don't have an idea of what you want to get, and see what they have. Make sure it's good and sturdy. Very important. Okay, so the next item is my lens. This is a 17-40. This one is a Canon. You can buy different generics for your camera. A lot of people do that. I like to stick with the brand. That's just me. So this is a 17-40. Would I go any wider than that? Probably not. Some people do. I think that I saw some photographer that he goes as low as wide as 14. That's up to you. I stick with the 17. That's my usual. Sometimes I'll go to 20. It just depends on how wonky it gets. As you do real estate photography, you'll get a sense of what's the best number to use. But if you do decide on a Sony, see what they have available for wide angle and look at the reviews on that particular lens. The next thing that I have, which is very important, is your external. This is my Flashpoint. It's a Explore 300. This is my go-to. I've had a few externals that ended up dying on me. I've had this now for 2 years. I've never had an issue. I did buy a backup light. They're a little expensive, but worth it. So I like this one because it has a nice little menu that's easy to follow, and it's very accurate. And that's what I like about it. Extremely accurate and very dependable. The next item I have is a speed light. This happens to be a Canon. It's a little expensive. This is the 600. You don't need this. You can probably get a Godox for less than $100. I know other real estate photographers that use the Godox. They're probably $100. You can throw them around, do whatever. If they break, you just buy another one. This one is a little different. The reason I spent so much money is not just because of real estate photography. I actually use this for portrait photography. So that's another item I would have as a backup. And if you do decide to go out and do some real estate photography with me, I'll show you how this can come in handy. The other thing I do is I always buy the shoes. So if I need to stick them on things, they just stay up a little bit better. They stand a little better. So the next thing is your remote or your trigger. This goes on top of my camera. With my flash point, I don't need a trigger on here. There's an internal trigger. So I can put this on my camera, which is nice. It has a little angle to it, and it has all the different settings. So if I use multiple flashes, I'm able to read them on here, and I love it because it's easy to read as opposed to one that's flat. This one's flat on the camera, hard to read, hard to set up. I don't really use this one anymore. And this is also a Godox. On the Speedlight or your extras, you are going to need a remote or a trigger to put on here. So it speaks to this, and it speaks to, this, and it speaks to your camera. My next piece of equipment is my iPad. This is my camera when I'm walking around. I basically tether this to my camera, and I use this as opposed to playing around with the settings on my camera. Once this is set up in the house, I move the camera, set it, and then I'm able to do different exposures. So if you do get into real estate photography, I highly recommend tethering using an iPad. I think you can get one a little smaller than this. And to tether, you need a Cam Ranger. This is USB to your camera, and then it speaks to your iPad. So this is important. You can't tether without this. The last thing I'm going to say is backup, 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 backup. You never know what's going to happen when you're out in the field. I know you're doing video now, so I'm sure you've got that in your mind that you're going to need backup just in case. I always have a few batteries extra just in case, or if I have a big job to do. That's my camera battery, and I also have my rechargeables. I must have about 20 of these in my bag because you never know. If it's cold out, whatever the case may be, you need backup. I do the same thing with my cards that I put in the camera, and my USBs to speak to my camera. Those are the things that I highly recommend. As time goes on, you may build on that. I know people that have all these little different bells and whistles. I do the basics. So Jacob, I hope that helps. And by all means, if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call, 774-526-2782. I'd love to help you out. Real estate photography is a lot of fun. Thank you.